Protocol 0. What the rangers don't report. You think a park ranger's biggest fear is a wildfire or a cornered grizzly? That's the story we tell to keep the parks open and the tourists calm. The truth is, our most critical protocols are the ones that will never be written down, for threats that aren't covered by any official jurisdiction. The sanitized incident report is just the first line of containment. The day I met Ben Carter, he was polishing his badge with a microfiber cloth, the academy shine still fresh on his boots and his worldview. He stood ramrod straight by the station's equipment locker, a checklist in hand, reciting standard issue inventory codes as if they were scripture. 24 years old, top of his class, and he carried his certainty like a second sidearm. I just poured my coffee, black and bitter, and watched him for a minute. "Morning, Carter," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You planning on blinding a bear with that thing?" He snapped to attention. "Ma'am, Senior Ranger Sharma, just ensuring all assigned equipment is present and in serviceable condition, per Regulation 7.4. I took a long sip of my coffee. Out here, Regulation 7.4 gets you about as far as the trailhead. "How's your truck looking?" "Fully fueled, comms checked, first aid kit restocked." He rattled it off with pride. "Ready for patrol." "Good," I said, pushing off the frame. "One last check. Let's hear your pack." Ben looked confused. "Hear it, ma'am?" "Shake it," I clarified. I hefted my own well-worn pack and gave it a gentle rock. It was silent as a stone. Acoustic discipline, Carter. Anything that jingles, rattles, or clicks, you either tighten it down or you leave it behind. He gave his pack a tentative shake. A faint metallic rattle came from inside, followed by the soft clink of a zipper pull against a carabiner. He shot me a look that was half amusement, half annoyance. "With all due respect, ma'am, I don't think a little noise is going to be a major issue. Standard procedure doesn't cover. Standard procedure was written by people in offices who think the worst thing in the woods is a man with a hunting rifle out of season." I cut in, my voice level but firm. "They don't know the hollers like we do. They don't know which ridges get particular. Some places, silence is the only camouflage that matters. Fix it." He hesitated, the academy manual warring with a direct order from his senior officer. The order won. He spent the next 5 minutes meticulously taping down zipper pulls and repacking his gear until it was as quiet as mine. He thought I was a superstitious old-timer, one of those backcountry eccentrics had been warned about. I didn't blame him. It's a hard thing to learn that the most important survival guides aren't printed. Later that day, dispatch called in a routine 1039, a suspicious activity report. Some day hiker claimed they'd seen a man walking off trail into Whisper Canyon, carrying no gear but a strange bundle of what looked like metal chimes. The call was logged, filed, and forgotten by everyone but me. I pulled up the internal archives, the ones that aren't part of the public record, and made a new entry in a folder that officially didn't exist. Another potential 1039 file, the kind where the official report would say one thing and the unwritten truth would be something else entirely. A story of appeasement, not rescue. Ben was still happily writing citations for illegal campfires, unaware that the real work, the quiet work, was about to begin. The official call came in at 0800 hours. A 207, missing person. Name, Elias Vance. Male, 34. Vehicle located at the Whisper Canyon trailhead. The request was boilerplate, the kind of summons that started 90% of our shifts in the high season. For Ben, it was a shot of adrenaline. He was all crisp angles and efficiency, plotting grid search patterns on the hood of his truck before I'd even finished my coffee. "Last seen 2 days ago," he reported, tapping a point on the topographical map. Based on his hiking permit, he was planning a 3-day loop. We should start at his last known waypoint and work outwards. Standard SAR procedure. There's no such thing as standard in Whisper Canyon, I said, pulling on my pack. The words left a familiar, metallic taste in my mouth. I checked my gear one last time, not for what was there, but for what wasn't. No clinking keys, no loose buckles, absolute acoustic integrity. The change began about a mile in. It wasn't a sudden shift, but a slow draining of sound, like the world was being bled of its voice. The chirps of unseen birds faded first. Then the rustle of wind through the lodgepole pines softened, becoming a dull, textureless hiss. Ben didn't seem to notice, his focus locked on his GPS, but I felt it in my bones, a pressure building behind the eyes. It was a heavy, listening silence. We found the first sign of Vance a few hundred yards off the main trail, near a dry creek bed. A single, high-tech trekking pole stabbed into the soft earth. Next to it was a small day pack. Ben moved to catalog the contents immediately, his voice unnaturally loud in the padded air. "Okay, we've got a water filter, half a bag of trail mix, a headlamp, standard stuff." He paused, pulling out a canvas roll. "What the hell is this?" He unrolled it on a flat rock. Inside, nestled in carefully cut felt pockets, were a dozen small brass bells. Each one was meticulously silenced, the clapper inside painstakingly wrapped with thin strips of deerskin and tied off with waxed thread. They were made inert, their entire purpose negated. Ben poked one with his finger. Some kind of art project? I felt a cold dread settle in my gut. This wasn't a hiker. This was a researcher. Or maybe a pilgrim. He hadn't come here by accident. I looked up from the useless bells towards the deep V of the canyon, where the silence was thickest. "He knew," I murmured, more to myself than to Ben. "Knew what, ma'am?" Ben was already plotting the new location, his mind on procedure and probability. "This find shifts the search radius. Logically, he'd follow the path of least resistance from here, probably along this ridge." I ignored the map he held out. My own map, the one etched into my memory by my predecessor, was telling me something different. "No, we don't take the ridge. We stay low, follow the water line." Ben frowned, the perfect crease of his academy training deepening. "The creek bed is choked with rockfall a quarter-mile up. It's slower, more dangerous. The ridge is the high-probability route." "It's not about probability, Carter. It's about presence," I said, my voice low. "You don't take the high ground here. You never stand on a summit or a ridge in this canyon. You make yourself small." His skepticism was a tangible thing between us. I could see him mentally filing me away under eccentric, another piece of backcountry folklore. But he was a rookie, and I was his senior, so his doubt was still leashed by protocol, for now. He nodded stiffly, his jaw tight. "Yes, ma'am." As we started walking, following the curve of the dead silent creek, I saw him subtly checking his compass, as if to reassure himself that the laws of physics and navigation still applied in a place that was actively forgetting the laws of sound. He thought I was leading him on a wild goose chase based on superstition. He had no idea I was following the first, most critical step of an entirely different kind of protocol, one designed not to find a man, but to avoid provoking what he had come here to disturb. Hours of methodical, meandering progress had worn Ben's patience down to a raw nerve. We'd been tracing the dry creek bed, a path that twisted back on itself and forced us to scramble over slick, moss-covered boulders. Every few minutes he'd pause to consult his GPS, the crisp digital lines of the map, a stark contrast to the winding, illogical path I was leading him on. "Ma'am, with respect, this isn't working," he finally said, his voice tight with restrained frustration. "We've covered less than 2 miles. Probability models put Vance on the upper trail system. We're wasting daylight down here." "We're not wasting anything, Carter. We're being polite." I didn't look back at him. My attention was fixed ahead, where our path was about to intersect a faint game trail, creating a natural crossroads in the oppressive quiet. We reached the junction, a small, unremarkable clearing marked by a gnarled juniper tree. I stopped, shrugged off my pack, and knelt. From a small pouch on my belt, I took 4 smooth, flat river stones. One by one, I placed them at the cardinal points around the base of them. Tree. North, south, east, west. A silent acknowledgement. A gift of order to a place that felt like it was fraying at the edges. Ben let out a short, sharp sigh of disbelief. "You can't be serious. We're on a search and rescue, and you're building a rock garden?" "It's a sign of respect," I said, standing up. "It lets the canyon know we're just passing through, that we aren't a threat." That was the last straw for him. The fragile leash of rookie deference snapped. "That's it. I'm done with this. Vance is up there." He pointed a rigid finger up the steep incline toward the ridge I'd explicitly forbidden. "And I'm going to find him using actual, proven SAR techniques, not folklore." "Carter, don't," I said, and my voice was harder than I intended. "You don't know what you're doing. That ridge is not stable ground. You do not go up there." "It's the most direct route," he shot back, already moving. "I'll radio my position every 15. You can stick to the creek bed if you want, but I'm doing my job." He didn't wait for a reply. He just turned and started climbing, his movements loud and aggressive, dislodging pebbles that skittered down the slope. He broke the compass rose I had just laid, kicking one of the stones aside without a second glance. I watched him go, feeling a familiar coldness spread through my chest. He hadn't just ignored an order. He'd kicked down the door to a house where he wasn't welcome. For 10 minutes there was nothing. Then my radio crackled. "Sharma, this is Carter. I've reached the ridge. The view is strange. Can't quite see the valley floor from here. It's hazy." His voice was still confident. Another 15 minutes passed. The silence in the canyon deepened, becoming a physical weight. And then it started. A low thrumming that wasn't a sound. It was a vibration in the fillings of my teeth, a pressure against my eardrums from the inside out. It was the feeling of a giant, unseen engine starting up all around me. The radio crackled again, this time laced with static that wasn't atmospheric. "Anya, what the hell is going on? The trail, it's not right. I've been walking for 20 minutes, but the next rise looks just as far away as it did when I started." His breath was ragged. "My compass is spinning. The needle is just spinning." I keyed the mic. "Ben, I need you to stay calm and retrace your steps." "Exactly. I'm trying," he yelled, his voice thin and panicked. "But there are no steps. The ground behind me is just wrong. It's not the way I came. That hum, can you hear it? It's inside my head." The SAR was over. He had pushed, and something had pushed back. The search for Elias Vance was now a secondary objective. The primary objective was containment, and the first person I had to contain was my own rookie. Ben's voice shredded over the radio, a panicked jumble of static and words about spinning compasses and shifting trails. I didn't waste time trying to soothe him. Reassurance is useless when the world has stopped following its own rules. I keyed the mic, my voice deliberately flat and devoid of emotion. "Carter, stop moving. Sit down right where you are and control your breathing. Do not try to find a landmark. Acknowledge." The reply was a choked gasp that might have been a yes. It was enough. I switched channels to the main dispatch frequency, my movements economical and swift. The time for caution was over. The time for control had begun. "Dispatch, this is Ranger 301, I said, the official cadence a stark contrast to the thrumming in my skull. "Be advised, I am encountering severe and unpredictable geological instability on the Whisper Canyon Ridge system. We're also experiencing extreme geomagnetic interference. Radio communications are unreliable and failing." I paused, letting the carefully chosen words sink in. They were true, just not in the way they'd understand. "I am declaring this an active hazard zone. I'm initiating emergency communications blackout to conserve power and moving to a safer position. Hold all inbound SAR units at the trailhead until you receive my all clear. Do you copy? The voice that came back was crisp, professional, and blessedly unquestioning. Copied 301, holding all units. Report when. Able. Dispatch, clear. I turned the radio off. The silence that rushed back in was deeper now, heavier. The non-sound humming had intensified, a relentless pressure that seemed to emanate from the very rock under my feet. The search was canceled. Ben hadn't just gotten himself lost. He had rung a dinner bell. He had trespassed, loudly and arrogantly, and now the canyon was redrawing its own boundaries with him inside. There is no official procedure for this. There is only Protocol 0. The name itself is a black mark in an unwritten book, a final option for when containment has already been breached. It's not in any manual, not taught at any academy. It's passed down from one senior ranger to the next, a grim inheritance spoken in low tones over campfires, a heavy knowledge of what to do when the maps lie. I left the creek bed, abandoning the search for Vance and the rescue of Ben, and began a new path. My destination wasn't a point on a map, but a feeling. I moved toward the source of the hum, letting the pressure in my head guide me. It led me away from all marked trails, into a dense thicket of ironwood that scraped at my clothes. In the heart of the thicket was a lightning-scarred fir tree, its base hollowed out by a fire that had burned decades before I was born. Inside the hollow, under a false bottom of packed dirt and deadfall, was a hard-shelled pelican case. I brushed the debris away, my fingers finding the familiar cold latches. The air hissed as I broke the seal. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was the gear for Protocol 0. There was no firearm, no signal flare, no piece of standard-issue survival equipment. Instead, there was a heavy blanket, woven from a dark, silk-like material, threaded with something that looked like copper wire. Beside it lay a set of 3 tuning forks, not of steel, but of polished black obsidian, each a different length. I took them out, their weight feeling both ancient and alien in my hands. This was not a rescue kit. It was an appeasement offering. I packed the gear into my own silent pack and resumed my journey, navigating by instinct now, chasing the dissonance. The trees grew stranger here, their branches twisting at unnatural angles, all leaning away from a central point ahead, as if recoiling from something I couldn't yet see. This was the convergence, the place where the skin of the world was thin. I was close now, close to Ben, to Vance, and to the listening, humming stillness that had taken them both. The humming intensified until it was no longer a vibration in my bones, but the very medium in which I moved. The air was thick with it, a pressure that warped the light and made the trees ahead look like shattered glass. At the center of the distortion was a small clearing, a bowl of unnatural stillness where nothing grew. And in that clearing were 2 figures. Ben was on his knees, hands clamped over his ears, as if he could block out a sound that wasn't there. His eyes were wide with a terror that went beyond fear of death. It was the terror of a man watching reality itself come apart at the seams. His procedural certainty had been stripped away, leaving only a raw, terrified core. A few yards from him sat the other man, Elias Vance. He was cross-legged and perfectly still, his back ramrod straight. He wasn't fighting the pressure, he seemed to be basking in it. His head was tilted back, a thin, ecstatic smile on his face, his eyes unfocused and milky. He had found his natural dead zone, and it had consumed him. He was a circuit board plugged into a power source far too great for it to handle, fried from the inside out. The silenced bells would found now made a terrible kind of sense. He hadn't been silencing them for his own benefit, but as an offering, a clumsy, amateur attempt to show he understood the rules before he broke them all anyway. Ben saw me and his face crumpled with a desperate, childish relief. "Sharma, you have to. It's everywhere. Make it stop." "It doesn't stop, Carter," I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet it seemed to cut through the oppressive thrum. "We just give it something else to listen to." I ignored both of them for the moment. My focus had to be absolute. I unrolled the heavy, dark blanket from my pack. The moment it touched the ground, the humming directly beneath it seemed to deaden, creating a small island of relative normalcy in the overwhelming dissonance. It was an anchor, a patch of solid ground in a collapsing world. I knelt on its edge and took out the 3 obsidian tuning forks. This was the part they can't teach you. The part my predecessor, old Martinez, had explained to me with haunted eyes and a hand that trembled even when holding a coffee mug. You don't fight the pressure. You don't resist it. You invite it in. I took the longest tuning fork, the one for grounding, and struck it against the heel of my boot. It produced no audible sound, but a deep, pure vibration traveled up my arm. A single, clean note in the chaotic hum. I closed my eyes and focused on that note, letting the external pressure flow into me. It felt like being submerged in ice water, a crushing weight that stole my breath and threatened to tear my thoughts apart. Memories not my own flickered behind my eyes. The panic of a startled deer, the slow, silent growth of a lichen on a stone, the immense geological patience of the mountain itself. I was a lightning rod, drawing the formless anger of the place into myself. My nose began to bleed, a warm trickle down my upper lip. I held on to that single, pure vibration, using it as a shield. Then I took the second, mid-sized fork and struck it. Its frequency was higher, sharper. I held it up, and instead of taking the pressure in, I began to shape it, redirecting the chaotic energy that was flooding me into a coherent pattern. It was like translating a scream into a song. The physical strain was immense. Every muscle in my body locked tight, and the world behind my eyelids swirled into a nauseating gray vortex. Finally, I struck the smallest fork. Its vibration was almost impossibly high and fine, a needle of pure resonance. This was the offering. I pushed all the focused, harmonized pressure I had gathered into that single point and let it go. For a heart-stopping second, the humming intensified, the pressure becoming absolute. Then, with a sensation like a string snapping, it receded. The oppressive weight lifted, the visual distortions shimmered and resolved, and the world rushed back in with all its forgotten sounds. The whisper of wind, the distant cry of a hawk, the frantic pounding of my own heart. The clearing was just a clearing again. The dissonance had accepted the offering. It was sated for now. It wasn't gone. It never is. It was just quiet. I swayed on my knees, exhausted to my core, wiping the blood from my face with the back of a trembling hand. Ben was staring at me, his face a mask of awe and disbelief. Elias Vance had slumped over, the ecstatic look gone, replaced by a vacant, empty stare. The connection was broken. I got to my feet, my legs unsteady. "Get up, Carter," I ordered, my voice raspy. "We're leaving. Now." I hauled the catatonic Vance to his feet, slinging one of his arms over my shoulder. "You take his other side. We move until we're out of this canyon. No stopping." Ben just nodded, his academy training a million miles away. He had seen what was behind the curtain. He finally understood the need for silence. The hike out of Whisper Canyon was a long, silent procession. We half carried, half dragged Elias Vance between us, his body pliant, but his mind 1,000 miles away. Ben didn't speak a word the entire way. He just moved with a grim, mechanical focus, his eyes fixed on the ground in front of him, avoiding the sight of the trees, the rocks, the sky, everything that had betrayed him. The confident, academy-trained rookie who had climbed that ridge was gone. The man who came down was quieter, hollowed out, older. Back at the station, the official narrative began to take shape, built word by careful word. I sat at my terminal, the headache from the ritual a dull throb behind my temples, and I wrote the fiction that would become the fact. Incident Report 734B, Rescue of Missing Hiker Elias Vance. The language was sterile, clinical, and completely true in its own limited way. Vance was located in a state of severe disorientation. Probable cause, prolonged exposure and dehydration, possibly exacerbated by ingestion of local flora, leading to powerful hallucinogenic effects. He was transferred to county paramedics for immediate medical and psychological evaluation. A footnote mentioned his abandoned gear, including unusual, handcrafted items, which were logged into evidence. Then Ben's part. Rookie Ranger Carter sustained a minor sprain to his left ankle during the search, a result of a fall caused by the demonstrably unstable scree fields on the upper ridges. I made sure to use the exact terminology from my radio call. It was a clean, closed loop. The communications blackout was justified by the terrain, and the terrain justified his injury. Ben stood behind me, watching the words appear on the screen. He had a small bandage on his ankle that I'd insisted he wear. He didn't look at the screen so much as through it. "My report will corroborate yours," he said, his voice flat. It was the first thing he'd said in hours. "Unstable ground, lost my footing, radio interference." "Good," I replied, not looking up. "That's how it works." I hit submit. The lie was now data, filed and official. In a day, it would be the only version of the story anyone would ever know. The canyon had been appeased. Now the bureaucracy had to be, as well. They were different kinds of entities, but both demanded their own specific ritual offerings. After the paperwork was done and the last of the county sheriff's deputies had left, the station fell silent. I was cleaning the obsidian tuning forks, wiping them down with a soft cloth before returning them to their case, when Ben walked over. He didn't sit, just stood there, watching my hands. The tremor in them was almost gone. "What was that?" he asked, his voice low, almost ashamed. "Up there, what was it?" I finished polishing the last fork and placed it carefully back in its foam cradle. "It's not a what," I said, finally meeting his gaze. His eyes were full of a terrible, newfound depth. "It's a how. It's how that place is. Some parts of this world are just tuned differently. They have their own equilibrium, their own rules. We're the intrusion, the noise. Vance went looking for it. You stumbled into it. But you did something." I reminded it that not all noise is a threat, I said. I gave it a pattern it could understand, an offering of quiet. "It's a negotiation, Ben. That's all this job is, underneath the citations and the search and rescues. A constant, quiet negotiation." I closed the case, the latches snapping shut with a final, satisfying click. We don't win. We don't defeat anything. We just maintain. We keep the peace. We manage the cycles, placate the territory, and we write the reports that keep everyone else from stumbling in where they don't belong. I could see the weight of it settling on him, the burden of a truth you can never share. It's a lonely kind of knowledge, and it changes you. It had changed me, and it had changed Martinez before me. "So it's still there," he murmured. "It'll happen again." "It's always there," I confirmed, "and it will happen again. Next time, you'll know to check the acoustic discipline on your pack. You'll know to stay off the ridges. You'll know to leave an offering at a crossroads." I paused, letting him absorb it. "And one day, you'll have to show a new rookie why." He nodded slowly, the simple movement carrying the weight of a vow. The certainty in his eyes was gone, but something stronger had replaced it. Understanding. He walked over to the equipment locker, opened it, and took out his pack. Without a word, he found a small roll of electrical tape and began to meticulously, silently, wrap the metal pull tab on his main zipper. "So the next time you read a sanitized incident report about a hiker lost to exposure, remember what might lie behind the official narrative. The greatest courage isn't found in confronting a wildfire or a bear, but in facing a threat you can never name and paying the personal cost to maintain a peace you can never explain. The truth isn't always in the words that are written, but in the silences they are designed to protect. These are the kinds of unwritten truths we try to give voice to here at Silent Whispers. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who appreciates the quiet corners of the world. For our discussion, I'd like to ask, do you believe Anya was right to create a false report, or should the true nature of the dangers in our wilderness be shared, regardless of the potential panic? Thank you for listening, and until we meet again, stay safe. Join us next time when we explore another hidden file, one that details what happens when a protocol fails and the only thing left to do is redraw the map entirely.